CFO. Good morning. I heard some inspirational words from Belinda and the chair. I heard dreamers, I heard believe, and I heard your story matters, or own your story. But being DEI conscious, I think we made a mistake with leading with the woman that did this morning, from the chair to Belinda, because effectively they set the bar so high, and as best as I can, I was just thinking, actually, what's the only thing I can go with? And then I remembered that all great things that happen in the world is because men was trying to impress their girlfriend. So let's see if I can keep up. But for a little bit of inspiration, I went to African Proverbs as a grounder, and there's one on our website which I actually like, which says that even a small house can house 1,000 friends. And within that context, 7 years ago, the idea of All Capital Partners started when some of us decided to leave corporate. And at that time, it was just a dream. And any dream kind of like needs connection with people. So I remember getting a hold of my old boss, Mr. Tony Reuters, to say, I have this idea. Will you join me on this crusade? And without hesitation, he said yes. And I remember a very long breakfast with Melanie. Melanie had also become a corporate refugee after a little bit of trauma from Macquarie and Bravura. And then she was thinking ballet and private markets, and she also decided to join the crusade. She kind of like kept me a little bit focused because in SAFCO, which is a private equity venture capital association, had this important and amazing program called the Fund Manager Development Program. And what it was a crash course over a year in private equity. And I met some amazing people during that course. But it was really in 2020 when COVID hit. And during that time, energies were very low, people were very despondent. A lot of people were externalizing money. There was a lot of hopelessness about the future of this country. And then as one was just getting tired with this negative conversation, we felt, how could we conceptually use the opportunity that we have, which is reducing unemployment, catalyzing growth, reducing poverty, in a unique and differentiated solution. So around Q1, I met Tumi by chance, who then introduced me to Tulu, and together we became the REimagineers, the dreamers. And we are living proof that cyber dating works, because we met over Teams. We dated every single week from April when we met religiously every Monday. That apparently all great religions in the world teach you that the only way of getting people to believe, I think was the other word, is to aggregate them and congregate them on 7-day cycles. So our cycle was on a Monday that effectively we met. And then fast forward, we met TD, who came with our first chair into the party. And then the tribe grew. And then we met for the very, very first time as a team in September 2020. I remember we had a week-long offsite. And for these entrepreneurs who I was traveling a journey with, it was weird then to have an offsite, because the prime focus of our offsite was self. And the self part was around your purpose. So it was a purpose quest. And they all found the work a bit weird because it was intangible. It kind of like looked into who you are, what are your dreams, what are your aspirations. And then from the individual work, we kind of like took it to the group work, which effectively was a work that we did to breathe life into REimagine. So it's called REimagine because we're trying to reimagine a different way of solving for those triple ills. And then when we looked at, I guess, what we were passionate about and what our competency was, we felt that utilizing retail, since we all loved retail, and politically looking at how the spatial apartheid development happened in South Africa, looking at how the built environment, I suppose, executed itself in the last property upcycle from 2002 to 2018, where I'm sure Belinda will concur that we did overbuild retail in the major metropoles to the point where I think when we started, South Africa was the second largest GDP per capita in the world outside of the US. And I believe now South Africa is the largest retail GLA per capita in the world, given the disruption that technology and logistics has provided to retail, mainly in the US. So those were the ingredients. And from there, I recall our first capital raising rodeo. We started with the biggest money bank in the country being the PIC. We went to go see Mauna and Marde, and after a while, Marde had a very honest conversation with us because our impact thesis was actually very broad. So it was convenience retail, affordable housing, student accommodation, all those things that were shown in a video as needed to catalyze economic development. So Marde, in her own direct way, kind of like said, I kind of like what you guys are doing, but these risk profiles of retail and other property types don't go together. So in order to progress with us, you're going to have to make a choice. So that was March of 2021. And after saying those hard words, then she decided to leave the PIC. And I wasn't sure whether it was us or there were other reasons that were compelling her to make the change. So from that moment, I suppose our moment of reckoning came in July 21. And what those unrest of July 2021 did was, at the time, I suppose, make us test our investment thesis. We were looking quite warm with a lot of capital allocators, and those events over those 3 days where looting happened, and I don't have to remind you, was basically testing the thesis. A lot of the allocators were asking themselves whether is it prudent allocation of capital into townships and rural areas, given, I suppose, how unstable the environment in these communities were. And I remember we thought long and hard about it, and we came back very much stronger to say that for the future of this country to be sustainable is precisely the reason why you should invest in townships and rural areas, because without that, we risk the very sustainability of our future. But they made us reflect and learn from those. So if you look at our investor presentations on the last page, all the learnings from the unrest. And then we were in discussions, so that was July 21. We got our license, I think, in August of 2021, FSCA license 51335, which also came at the expense of losing our first chairman. And at the same time, getting our first commitment letter from the Eskom Pension and Provident Fund. Now, that had a year to expiry. Riskura came into the picture, and we started the process. And around April then of 2020, March 2022, we somehow got connected with Vukile. And it was one of those conversations, if you've met Lawrence Rapp, where literally 30 minutes we were done. As in 30 minutes there was alignment, and then we decided to stop. to say it's gone too well, just stop before we stuff it up, and let's rather have the next meeting. What I didn't know at that point in time is that Chad decided to stop the DD process because there was a material event happening, but he didn't tell me. So fast forward, we walk a road further then with Vukile until we get to August. And EPPF say they don't like Vukile's commitment letter because they see it as having too many conditions to it. So after that process, Rescura came to the party, and as I said, around about 11th of November 2022, we achieved our first close of 800 million rands from Vukile, 200, EPPF 200, and Rescura, which was Telkom 200, Motor Industries was 100, I think. And then the other funds like auto workers and Copatas, the rest. So to stand here in front of you to look at how full the small room has become, it's really humbling. And I do clearly want to thank all of you, from not just the equity investors to our funders and our partners, because without you, I guess we will not be here. But are you going to do the presentation up? To contextualize it, all partners, capital partners, does anyone know what ALT stands for, by the way? No one? All right. ALT are the first three letters to the word alternative. Because when we started, our investment thesis was premised on advocating for the change in Regulation 28 to see the bigger allocation improve from 3% to what is now regulated in terms of 15, but we clearly saw global best practice where UK and Euro funds were sitting at 25% and some of the US at 35%. So that is a bigger wave, I guess, that we prepared ourselves for. So ALT then are the first three letters of alternative. So that entity is 7 years old, and REimagine incorporated on the 11th of November 2022. So a lot of what I'll be discussing then is effectively our second year of operation in REimagine. And as you all know, it's a private equity real estate fund. It's got a 10-year life. And those dates are very important because next month REimagine is actually 3 years old. And in terms of the design of the fund, we've got 5 years of commitment where we expected to deploy the capital. At the end of commitment, there's a fee basis change. If you're not deployed, you run a commercial risk because your fees reverse. So we've always had a big incentive then to deploy, and then and so on. So I have more or less categorized my presentation into two parts. So this first part is really to account on how the fund has actually performed for the year ended March 2025. And then I'll come back later in the day to actually give you more thinking in terms of what our future looks like and how I suppose we think about it. So the first part is likely to be, just factual recollection of how we did. So in the light of telling a story, our story then consists of 12 chapters that I'll be navigating you through. And then in the next slide, I realize that we all come from different places. We like using big words, so we've also then provided a glossary for those that need to understand the big words. And if I start with the end, which is really the whole story, is on the next slide, is, at a fund level portfolio overview, it was a very busy year. We effectively executed transactions to the value of 550 million rands through 7 assets, a GLA of 28,000 square meters. We've attracted monthly about 174,000 feet to our retail space. And as the chair was saying earlier, we've actually impacted on over 130,000 households in the communities that are our addressable market. As small as we were, we've created over 1,100 jobs, with the majority of those of 519 being among youth. And in terms of our SMME or transformative procurement, we've also appointed 117 SMMEs in our space, and 55% of those were female or women owned. We've engaged around about 16 local vendors in our addressable market, spent about 8.3 million rands, and procured from all our expenditure about 93% from suppliers that were level 1 to 4. And in terms of our leadership, we're very proud of our leadership. So our board is majority female at 57, and the management team is on an equal footing with the boys at 50%. If you go to the next slide, which is to give a little bit of flavor about REimagine. They're written much nicer on the slide, so I'm going to read so that I don't lose the essence of REimagine. So it is a purpose-driven social impact retail fund that aims to unlock the economic potential of rural and township communities across South Africa. The fund's core strategy is centered on investing in convenience retail properties that deliver essential goods and services to the underserved populations, while also catalyzing local economic development. We are responding to the structural inequalities in South Africa's spatial and economic landscape by enabling equitable retail development and economic access. And the fund plays an instrumental role in reshaping the township and rural environment through development of a sustainable, inclusive commercial hubs. And these hubs are designed not only to serve as points of commerce, but to also support broader community well-being, facilitate job creation, improve access to everyday necessities, and promoting small business. I'll say those words are the essence of REimagine. We are clearly an investment house, so we got a very deep investment philosophy and objective, and our belief is anchored on the fact that strategic asset allocation into these underserved retail markets can serve as a catalyst for inclusive and sustainable development. So we do target high potential market segments within rural and township economies that exhibit significant barriers to access, infrastructure gaps, and limited commercial representation by mainstream capital. In terms of our fund objectives, it is about strengthening and modernizing retail infrastructure, promoting sustainable employment, stimulating local economic activity, and enabling economic access. As the chair was saying earlier, if you move on to the next slide, is that our approach ensures that the financial performance is achieved alongside social equity and environmental sustainability. So if I just give you flavor of our investment framework, which is on the slide, we are extremely analytical in terms of how we look at data. We look at it from a macro perspective. We look at it from a micro perspective. The environments that we operate in are very local. So there's quite a lot of the macro stuff that informs where we are in terms of investment cycles, to understanding the catchment areas that we want to invest in, to actually understanding a little bit more around the shoppers or the community that actually inhabit the environments that we work. Our strategic due diligence process has been quite interesting in a sense that we do the normal property DDs that we've all grown up to know, and alongside that we do our ESG DDs. And our ESG DDs and effectively help us think very strategically and operationally just around the ESG factors. So we'll concern ourselves with looking at the risk of flight planes where some of those opportunities are located. We'll look at quantifying the risk of unrest as a lending from July 2021. And clearly we'll look at understanding the demographics of that catchment area in terms of what the traffic patterns are, what the income earning potential is. And we overlay a lot of prudent risk management to it. So to just recap in terms of our investment guidelines, the mandate is South Africa, is all the 9 provinces, not more than 50% in any single province, not more than 20% in any single instrument. We can go to our bosses in LPEC and increase 20 to 25. We try and mitigate also in terms of tenant mix in the properties. So we target mainly 70% national representation. We leave around about 30% for localization as well, because it's about achieving that mix between the national retailers and also playing our part in developing the emerging managers. And that's it in the main. We are allowed to clearly gear up to 60%. That's why we have so many bankers in the room. And but in addition to that, I don't want to underplay part of the process, which is around stakeholder engagement. So those of you that were listening to Kulu talk about some of our experiences with Ekupumleni, you have to co-develop, design, and engage with those communities, because I believe is that the land is a land. The land is immovable. We add value on the top structure, but that building will be there way beyond us. Since we have to exit in 10 years, the next owner is going to come. So that building actually belongs to those communities, because it is an environment that they have to engage with every day in terms of how they live, work, play, and socialize. So the community forums are a real thing. Understanding the leadership hierarchy in those communities is a real thing. And the last bit is effectively benchmarking. So we've learned that unless you can measure it, you won't be able to execute it. So part of the value that Clare International adds, we haven't started, we're starting in the next quarter, is basically to just provide us with that industry benchmark so that we can get the benefit of the 5.4 million of GLA space that's in that universe, to help benchmark how our categories are performing, our trading densities are performing, so that we can basically enhance our asset management activities. So I'll say those 5 are the core of what we do. And in terms of our investment life cycle, I suppose where we are now is the first 2. I always said to all the stakeholders that we engaged in to say that the relations that we've built in the industry over the years, the relationships that we have with the bankers, for us is actually quite a strength in terms of creating investment opportunities. So when we look at what we've executed in the time that we have, is really those relationships. And if I just go back, I just remember it was also like an evolution, because I'll say Q1, after we incorporated, there was a lot of nonsense that came on our desk. And I remember us having to be very hard to say, this is an opportunity to set the benchmark and let the market know where your standards are. So we said no to a lot of stuff. And I know the last time I checked, we were at about 1,100 transactions that I think, had evaluated. How much? Oh, only 100. All right, okay. I'm in the future. But yeah, in terms of basically taking through the funnel. But I'll say, sourcing acquisition, that's been our main activity at the moment. We're clearly moving to asset management. So we always felt that, from an investment perspective, clearly the risk is high when you start with 1 or 2 assets. And we had to work hard to get to the magical number of 12. So we believe 12 is a magical number where you could say you've got a well-diversified portfolio. You don't have any single asset risk per se. And in many respects, I suppose what we're reporting on is that we believe we are there, not only in terms of asset exposure, but also in terms of geographical diversification. And value creation is a lot of what you'll hear a lot about today, because it's something that we've been working on in the background. And a lot of investors yesterday were obsessed with the word exit, so a lot of our conversations were around exit. We will exit when it's time to exit. But yeah, it's something clearly that we pay continual attention to, because Stuart was reminding me that as investors, I guess we are guided by the investment thesis, and when an opportunity achieves that investment thesis, and that is a good time to exit. So yeah, you can keep us to account in terms of how true we are to that. If you move to the next slide, I think I'm very proud of the team that we've really assembled in REimagine All Capital. As the chair was saying, is very diverse from an age. I think we range from, excuse me if I get it wrong on that end, 1947 to like 1998. That's the extent of our age demographic. But as far as the board is concerned, I remember when we incorporated, a lot of the feedback was that our board was a bit light in terms of property per se. Because if you look at Melanie, she brings a lot of private equity, a lot of impact, a lot of gender activism, which is what's helped us achieve the gender status that we have. And she also brings a little bit of finesse with the ballet side. So we've learned to collaborate and be finesse. And we've got Tony, who's like a serial entrepreneur. We call him the school principal because IC starts at 8, and if you're late at 8, dare you say good morning at 3 minutes past as you walk in. I'll feel sorry for you in terms of disturbing the meeting. To Pumi, who unfortunately is not here, so she's our chair of sect. Gran passed on and the funeral is today, so unfortunately she's not here. And she's a very hardcore woman, and I remember what impressed us in the interview is that she did army. And it's not a normal stereotype to see a young black woman being an army corporal in weapons or whatever, or artillery as I call it. So that was quite impressive. But she's done construction and building management. And then we've got Natisha, who's a chair of ARC, who also is a QS, so is Hatla, a QS. So the interrogation that goes into our investment propositions, much to Tulu's dislike, because all these feasibilities are not just questioned at the answer, they are questioned at every assumption and line item that informs it. And that, I suppose, keeps us sharper, keeps us agile, just make sure that, yeah, we at least got the support to do the best that we can at all times. And TD keeps us honest as a COSEC to make sure that everything functions. And the investment team itself is also quite diverse. So when the boys and I call them boys and I call them girls, as nothing derogatory as my term of endearment. So within the boys, when we started, I suppose we felt we had complementary skills, right? So I was 25 years in institutional investing, corporate system, and Dumi was a banker, ex-banker, and we felt that the combination of his banking plus entrepreneurial was very, very important given, I suppose, the capital structure that we wanted to manage. Amongst the three of us, Tulu is really the creative genius in terms of just having an amazing ability to just see opportunity in the middle of nowhere. And hopefully you got a little bit of a sense of it, how the origination of Akupumleni happened. So when he takes that clip drift after occasions, I don't mind, because I just know that it could be leading to opening doors in one way or another. So it was very complimentary. And clearly when Nozipo joined us in January of 2023, I was proud because then we had 2 chartered accountants in the team, and clearly the IQ of the team was immediately enhanced. And but she also brings a different, I suppose, she keeps us in a straight and narrow, because I'll say I'm a creative, high level, similar to Tulu. Dumi is more the logical, analytical type, and Nozipo is the one that says, are you sure? And then she asks us all those questions that annoy us at the time, but eventually keep us safe. And then our two young ladies with Wasima and Unati, yeah, they bring a lot of different energy. And I'm sure you experienced a bit of Wasima yesterday. So a lot of people have been curious in this life stage of mine why I've chosen firstly to work with people that I haven't worked with before up to now, and secondly with younger people, because my team is very, very young. So they call me Madala, just like I call Hatla and Tony Madala at the board. And but it's learning the ability to exist within that fluidity, right? And I remember when we were employing Wasima, so she listened to our spiel, and our onboarding is almost like tribal council in terms of basically open interview to just make sure we cover 360 everything. And then after that, Zach is now making the offer. So Zach says to me, Wasima is refusing to sign. And I'm thinking, what do you mean she's refusing to sign? Because we made quite a competitive offer given what we knew. Wasima was refusing to sign because in the interview she kept on asking the culture of the business and whether we are open to a hybrid work. So we said, of course we're open to hybrid work because we're kind of like R&B that way, that office hours or great ideas don't know office hours. And then she said, but I don't see it on my employment contract. So, so she actually made us change the employment contract to incorporate the hybrid work clause. But the point with millennials and Gen Z is that they keep you on your toes and they keep you honest, as you'll probably learn with some of your kids. And both Wasima and Unati are also a product of the Vukile Academy, so which is how we've also kind of like coexisted with Vukile. So Unati joined us, I think it was on the 15th of February this year. And yeah, so she's still in the process of finding a voice, but a very lekker addition to the team. And if I just move on to, I guess, transformation, we don't like talking transformation, but I guess this is just a report back on our activities. The fund is level 1 triple BE in terms of inclusive economic participation and equitable development, so clearly proud of that. The leadership structure pretty much reflects South Africa's demographic diversity, with black professionals and women represented at both executive and non-executive level. In terms of development of black-owned suppliers, it's part of what our social aspect of our ESG thesis in essence is all about. Employment equity in operations, we actively support employment equity through inclusive hiring practices, skills development programs, etc. And the transformation process is monitored through very structured KPIs. The chair referred to the PIC CAPS, that's short for Corrective Action Plan, which was a whole series of negotiation in terms of conditions that we needed to correct as part of accepting the big check with them as our major investor. And I think we've reported on that quarterly, and yeah, we were quite proud to actually outperform that in terms of time that were put for us to outperform. So, but yeah, those are KPIs that keep us honest. We continue to report, and as a business, yeah, quite proud of the level of transformation. If I move on to chapter 3, which is broadly around sustainability, and I'm very proud to have Wangi in our audience here, because I told Hungry that when I get tired, or when I sense that you are getting tired with my voice, I'm going to bring Hungry to help me with the complicated stuff. But yeah, but in essence, yeah, we gave a lot of thoughts to actually our sustainability agenda. As the chair was saying, it wasn't really about tick the box. Every team member needed to own it. And I remember the initial process, which was pre-incorporation that we did. We started with a team to firstly get them to understand the SDGs, effectively vote for their favorites. Then we took the process to the board. Similar process. Initially, it defined our 10 priorities from an ESG perspective. And only then did we then put frameworks in terms of the sustainability agenda. So we do clearly have a ESMS, which is an environmental and social management framework that embeds our ESG principles across all stages of the investment life cycle, from origination, and it will apply to exit. It is informed by fancy, complicated stuff. So we are a signatory to CRISA. We comply with the UN Principles of Responsible Investment, the IC performance standards, and what makes, I guess, our sustainability framework also nice is that it's not just based on the SDGs. We also spend time to link it to the National Development Plan, because we felt that you can have frameworks that are global, but unless you are relevant to this country, it misses the boat. And it's pretty much integrated then in how we acquire our properties, how we design them, and how we construct them. And we are pretty much also active in terms of ESG management and ownership. So the fund clearly aligns with age or the construction standards with IFC. And in terms of active management post-acquisition, we ensure continuous ESG performance monitoring of ESG risk and opportunities. So our in-house champion is our CRO, who also then carries accountability of reporting on our ESG or sustainability activities, firstly with SECT, and the chair of SECT then to the board. And as Wasima was saying yesterday, yeah, we take transparency and accountability very, very seriously. And I'm glad, I think it was in Belinda's presentation where she mentioned the word trust. And I do fundamentally believe that the essence of this relationship is trust at the end of the day. We're all custodians of people's monies, and clearly to inform the partnership that we have, the essence of it is trust and being accountable. So yeah, we pride ourselves in, I suppose, how we relate with our stakeholders, how we reinforce these practices, to just ensure that we conduct ourselves in an ethical manner. We treat the communities with dignity. We engage our respective stakeholders, whether they are a community leader or a banker on the other hand, or an LPEC member at the other extreme, with the same level of respect. And it is important, I guess, in the contrast that we are trying to manage by creating social impact in the addressable area. So if we look at our impact then at a glance, I'll be brief on this because I think we've touched on it, and I'm also getting a bit monotonous with my own voice. Next slide. Is that at a fund level, we're very proud. I mean, the 550 million rand invested, as I said earlier, it's allows us to comply, or it's aligned with SDG 9, 13 and 11. Very huge pride in terms of the jobs that we've managed to create, that we've already spoken about. And with our retail management partners, we continue to improve access, which also talks to allowing, I suppose, those that are left behind. And the small things in terms of structural, ensuring that the environment caters for people with disability. And I like what Belinda was saying, is that the way that we also think about how these spaces integrate with the community, they have to move away from traditional product design of food, banks, clothing or fashion, to liquor, to actually being service hubs, because it's an opportunity for the community to come do their government services. They have to integrate with healthcare. So I'm sure Wasima will talk about what we're doing with Temagukwezi, which is quite exciting in that regard. We look at growth, and in many respects, I mean, Vicky will tell you the process of trying to accredit the suppliers that we deal with, because we're still licensed, so KYC is still a thing, and actually guiding them through a process of completing business cards, make sure that governance in terms of SIPSI, it's a lot of hand-holding, but we do it because we just committed to making sure that we uplift ourselves as we rise. The next slide, I've pretty much spoken about job creation, community development, so I won't repeat that. And if I move on to the next slide, which really talks then about economic development. Maybe here I'll just pause a little bit and just tell a story. The thing with partnerships, it is very important to have partners that are completely aligned with your objectives. And in many ways, I know when you are, I suppose, starting, you are just wanting to attract capital. But for us, it was very important that the capital that we attracting to back us is fully aligned to our business objectives in terms of making an impact. And we are very privileged in that regard to say all of our investors, I'll say we are 100% aligned in terms of the sustainability or the impact or the difference that we want to make to the world. And equally, when we deal with construction and development, Tulu yesterday kind of like hinted on it to say a lot of the professionals that we use on our projects are not just professionals that we met yesterday, but they are professionals that Tulu and Tumi dealt with extensively in the past. And I remember when we started doing Lesedi, because we spoke about Ekupumeni, so I'll just give you a brief story about Lesedi. Lesedi was one of those shopping centers that was built in the 80s as part of Black economic empowerment driven off by NAFCOC. And it represented the Black hope in the township of Vosloorus. Vosloorus clearly was like all townships put together as part and parcel of trying to migrate or control how people live and work. So it's a hodgepodge of different cultures in one space. And if you look at these historic political videos, as one area that was prone to a lot of violence. And when we bought it with the idea of partnering with a community. So it's the only development that we've done where we've actually partnered with Black business from the community. Started off as 34 individuals that we then had to copterize or make into a business so that they could elect directors, and Tidi lost a bit of hair in that process of trying to validate whether the people exist or not, and the bank accounts, etc. And then we had, when we were going on site, a similar experience as July 2021. We found out that 3 of those shareholders were not happy with their commercials, and they literally caused a lot of nonsense in with the community. And what we experienced was exactly July 2021. They barricaded the streets, they prevented the professional teams from going on site, they threatened the team, and. And exactly the lessons that we learned from July 21 then in terms of mitigating that. And mitigation clearly was engaging, was 1. 2, was effectively working with the taxi association and not just seeing them as a mode of transport, but as actually as a very integral part to your security regime. But I was more humbled by the work that we did with our construction company. Because with our construction company, we actually, as part of aligning with the community or collaborating with the community, we actually did a skills audit across the community of Vosloorus. Found out how many plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, etc. And the reason we were doing it was that so that we can actually account for the jobs that we are creating. And clearly, you'll understand the insurance regime and the contracts that exist between us or the fund as an owner and the construction company, that they had to effectively accommodate these job parcels that were created within their contract. But we could be transparent in terms of the process, where there was a lot of transparency, how selection was made, who got selected, so that we could actually account then on a monthly basis. So when we say 448 jobs were created in Lesedi, and we can point how many of those were females, how many of those were youth. And even with youth, it was actually quite nice that we got some students to give them an exposure into the property industry. And the other thing that we did was to also get some representation from the community to sit on the project steerco. We paid them because our idea was to also leave them better off as a result of us having walked the road. We sponsored them to go to Cape Town, and the Council of Shopping Centre was great, so that they could actually experience the biggest aggregation, I guess, of people in the value chain, not just for the networking, but also being there for to meet the retailers and just get the energy of the retail environment, which is quite precarious. So you'll see in that graph that, yes, a lot of the jobs are clearly created in construction and development, and we don't control the jobs from the retailers. But what we did with Lesedi again is that we encouraged all the retailers. So we sat with Boxer and all the retailers that were coming onto Lesedi. We tried to encourage them to clearly employ from the community. So they provided us with job specs. Again, we ran a process where we used a property to advertise the jobs that were going. And I remember those photographs as Yanga was reporting. We thought, maybe there'll be 100 people that came to apply. There were like over 1,000 people that came to apply for those jobs. And clearly, it's also accounting with a retailer, since we're not a labor broker. And clearly, other people's get unhappy. And I remember being called names. Nah? They said we are Nomnomos cronies. In terms of a placard, when one person wasn't happy with us stopping his labor broking activity, actually. But as best as we can, we clearly measure the data, we report on it, which helps us then define the jobs that we are creating in the construction, as well as the income-producing assets. We keep data for vendors as well. So we've impacted, I guess, by Q4 on 1185, Onati on the next slide. And on average, retail centre supported about 100 to 150 to 200 permanent positions per site, with additional temporary roles during development and refurbishment targets. In terms of number of SMMEs, yeah, it's again, Lesedi stands out in the reportable period as a development then that we completed in November last year. All right, I'm getting tired. Are you ready to help me? All right, but anyway, on the next slide, yeah, as I said, it's a whole lot of slides. I suppose you can go through it in terms of the SMMEs that we've supported, how we've increased local economic activities, and what we measure in terms of economic activity is clearly foot traffic growth, consumer spend retention. We try and monitor the multiplier effect of it. And post-opening days, as an example, in Ekupumleni, the surveys that we did indicated a 23% rise in local retail activity within the first 3 months, reflecting a shift from informal to formal. And if you look at the next slide, which then talks about our investments in underserved areas, so five, so how many is that? 5, 8, 11, 13 assets. Okay, one is in Gauteng, sorry, I'm trying to add. One is in Gauteng, we've got 3 in Eastern Cape at the end of the year, 1 is in KZN, in Matadeni, 2 in the Western Cape, 1 in the Northwest, and 2 in Mpumalanga. So for the 2025 year, yeah, our main activities were on Lesedi, which effectively serves a densely populated township with minimal formal retail infrastructure. Ekupumleni Retail, which we visited yesterday. Aliwal North, also one of our smaller properties. When we acquired that property, we also acquired the land next to it as one of the redevelopments that we actually went on ground with in August this year. Madadini is one of the smaller properties as well in KZN. As the chair was saying, it's a relatively young population which is unemployed. So a lot of our activities do create those job opportunities, improve access to retail. Temokwezi, I'll get Wasima to say a few things about it later, is one of our 2 Cape Town assets, being Temokwezi and Erica. Erica is situated next to the University of the Western Cape, lots of good energy around it, very vibrant, lots of high density residential around it, anchored by Spa, a very exciting development. Our two inception properties were Rustenburg and Beat Retief, which we bought from Vukile. Rustenburg, we knew it was a redevelopment opportunity since it carried Edgas, I guess, is trading over 6,000 of square meters of GLA. So we knew we needed to repurpose it. Again, we started that redevelopment in August, so quite exciting with those two. As our first two redevelopments, very active in terms of Beat Retief, which serves as a strategic cross-border logistic corridor, which supports commuter and regional trade. Amsterdam is one of our smaller properties. It was a joke in the office and within SEC for the longest of time because we had a sewer issue that our CRO got a love letter from the department. So yeah, so if you look at the cost or expense ratio of that one, a lot of money was spent to manage that issue, and we're very proud to say we have successfully managed to get to the other side of that. But yeah, we continue to be active. I think key word for us, is never a straight line. We do as South Africans do. We mark a plan, but so long as there's progress going forward. All right. I'm feeling tired about ESG. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I think I've killed ESG. But anyway, we keep clearly a lot of data, not only also in the next slide, Unati, around the energy that we consume. We monitor the intensity thereof. EPPF is encouraging us now, and I think PIC as well, to also try quantify the carbon emissions. So we're busy with Hungary trying to work out those families to capture that in our portfolio. We clearly manage the water utilization, and I'm sure Kudu later will just share a little bit more in terms of how we're doing that in partnership with them. All right, that's on ESG. I feel like I need a drink of water. All right, I'm going to get to my favorite part, which is if you skip Unati all the way to portfolio summary, chapter 6. Cool. So getting back then to the investment side or the money side, what's a proud achievement by the end of 31st of March is that, the first year, which was February 23, we had 0. Thank you very much. 2024, we had 5 assets, so it's first top 5 on that list. And so which means 2025 year was actually a record year, completing 8 transactions, 550 million rands, including one piece of land. So I think I've touched on it's basically everything from number 6 on that list onwards. If you go to the next slide, it's probably my favorite slide out of the pack to say that within 2 years we've managed to, I suppose, grow our income base to 73 million rands, which represents an increase of 273 on last year. Clearly, our property expenses have increased accordingly, but the portfolio managed to generate NOI or net property income of 28 million rands, which represents an increase of 148%. Belinda said inflation was 3, so I guess by June. So this is a few multiples over. Cost to income, there are specific reasons for it, but clearly 61 is deterioration. I think the board's penalized us on that extensively, but it's also part and parcel when I come back later around the reasons we're doing some of the stuff that we're doing. I always say to Itu that I'm very jealous of Wikile's expense ratio, which I think is around about 15 or something. But so it is possible, so we'll remain inspired. But we sit with a GAV of about 746 million, which is a substantial increase on last year. And we've got debt of 358 from Investec on the commitment-backed facility, which means that our NAV in 2 years has then grown from pretty much 0 to 500 million, which I think is a commendable performance from the team. And if you go to the next slide, we started with facilities. Duncan, it was 370 million when we more or less did the first facility. We increased it to 585. As I said in the previous slide, we've drawn 358 of that, and at pretty competitive rates for an emerging manager of Java plus 200. There's still a big differential clearly that apply between whether you're a REIT or whether you're emerging. Keenan is never impressed with how we try to negotiate it because he says RMB is RMB, the rate is a rate. But they've been also kind, I suppose, in terms of giving pretty competitive rates. But it is something that we actively manage. We try own all our properties direct via title. And there are a few exceptions of properties that are owned via SPVs. So Lesedi is one that I said earlier, where REimagine owns 51 and the community or Black Partners own 49. Kenton-on-Sea, the filling station is an SPV. We own 100% of it. And it's two separate IRVs because some of our investors, I suppose, are requiring or have got zero fossil fuel policies. So we just structured it in such a way that if it's imposed as a corrective action, is easy to execute. And when Solo asked me the question yesterday, or was it Stuart, to say what is likely to be the first asset to exit, is likely to be that filling station. But I'll tell you that that filling station makes as much money revenue-wise as a shopping center. So, so we looking at it. And Khanyesa and Ngamakwe are two developments, so clearly we partner with the local people in terms of that. How am I doing in terms of time, madam? Hey? Am I over time? Are you being serious? Yo. My family says I speak a lot, but it doesn't seem like it at home, eh? All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I'll speed it up. Apologies about that. I guess on performance, private equity structure, we're still pretty much in a J curve. So the black line reflects what we call gross IRR, which is an indication of our property performance. So as you can see, in December 24, it was running at 6.92. I heard Belinda mentioning 5.5. So which means at the end, we took quite a bit of hits in terms of impairments. Hey? Okay, cool. All right. Because Stuart was going to kill me if I rush through this slide. Yeah, we had impairments at the end of the year, which basically resulted then in the good income growth that we are seeing from the portfolio reducing then to a negative 3%. So the big impairments is Ekhupumleni, which is why we took you to Ekhupumleni so that you can understand the context behind that impairment. Because effectively we ended up paying twice for the same property just given what we were managing. And a lot of the mitigation is post-year end because we mitigated by effectively going through the developer's balance sheet. We recovered some lands. So in the new year, we own land in Sebokeng that we are busy converting. And we've clearly gone legal with the developer because he's done a few criminal things and other reasons. The other, I suppose, negative impairments were assumption-driven in terms of Erica and Aliwal North. And Lesedi was effectively, I suppose, as I said, when we bought the property, it had a building which was priced in and we demolished that building. So it's basically the impact of all of that. But we've taken LPEC through all that reason, and I'll say from LPEC to the board, to the AGM, everyone asked one question: is this permanent or is it recoverable? And clearly we do believe that we'll be able to recover. But it's a big ANR, I suppose, for the year end. It is what it is. So what it's meant then at the fund level is that it's we are sitting at minus 15.4, which is a deterioration clearly from December where we only negative 8. But I think there's already improvements looking at June and looking at September. So we're quite positive Keep on saying to me, we'll break even by a year end. And then he says, no, don't be aggressive. Take a little bit that way. But yeah, but the portfolio is generating a bit of cash, and that's what it means. And below that is just to articulate what the capital position is for our investors. So as I said, on the equity side, we sit with 1.3 billion rands of commitment. There is skin in the game in terms of the management team, to the extent of 6.5. We've drawn down about just under 50% so far in terms of the 627 that we've drawn down to date. The 52.8 reflects the negative impairments, and we amply describing it as unrealized gain or loss. And I've already spoken about the positive performance from the portfolio, which has generated, I suppose, positive 74. But net, it reflects a minus 15 in terms of the gross IRR. So those of you, okay, I'm not going to go into the mechanics. But if I move on to the next slide, which effectively you'll understand that we in a growth phase, we clearly onboarding properties at different stages. So we don't have normalized yet in terms of properties that have traded for the full 12 months. So we'll get there when the portfolio stabilizes. So just understand it's just a picture at a point in time. But we just try to remove the noise in this picture by just focusing the previous slide, Tunati, on the stable portfolio, which is at this stage a GLA of 47,000, cap value of 612. What's important to note here are really the properties that make an alpha difference on the portfolio. So the big ones, and the big ones are really Tamokwezi at 19.5, Piet Retief at 18.6, and Erica at 19%. NOI of stable portfolio around about 15 million rands. You can see under approved initial yield, I'll say we've done acquisitions generally at good prices over the 2 years. So the most expensive we paid is 8.5, which was Western Cape Premium. And the cheapest was Rustenburg at 16.8, but it was a redevelopment opportunity. So it wasn't really cheap. It just basically means when we do the redevelopment, it normalizes to normal yield. But I think all in all, on average, we've acquired our properties at about 9.5 on average towards 10, which given the interest rate regime, I think is quite a good acquisition rate. Portfolio vacancy, I think we also took a hit on this one. So we tried to target 3. So 3.9 was a bit on the high side. But as you can see, is very concentrated. Ekupumlani we spoke about is 21.5%. We're sitting with Lesedi at 9.2 and Madadeni at 7.3. And what's the other one? Piet Retief at 5.6. But largely, vacancies are a good rate. I'll ask Wasima to just spend a bit of 2 seconds to just give me a break to just maybe talk around through the asset management strategies, just around those 3 big properties. So Piet Retief, if you don't mind, Wasima. Temokwezi, and we've spoken about Ekupumeni yesterday, so we don't have to do that. So Lesedi, Piet Retief, and Tembo.
All good. So I would like to say that these are obviously to year end, and where we sit now is much further ahead. So in terms of Piet Retief, by the end of this calendar year, will I be at 0% vacancy. We've done a lot in terms of adding nationals, so Lewis Group, Pep Home, and Sanlam are coming in, and that effectively removes the 5% down to nothing. Sorry. Wasn't expecting applause. But yeah, I think it's part of the larger asset management plan for smart letting. So even though we've got that limited life of 10 years, we're still planning our letting as if we're going to be their landlord forever. If you are going to put your money in to do long-term thinking, despite the structure. So we're doing solid nationals and SMMEs that we see value in, and that can provide value to the community. So that's part of the tenant mix alignment. Ben mentioned Tembukwezi. In Tembukwezi, we are expanding, increasing by, I wrote it down, 82.5%. Reno Care Clinic, they do, yes, that's the word, dialysis services in Khayelitsha. The only other one that exists that I'm aware of is in the waterfront, and I think they've just opened a clinic in Paarl. So it's the only one in that township environment. Dialysis services are very rare and expensive in the country, so we're very proud of that partnership we'll have with the Reno Care brand. And then in the city, there's a lot of settling that has happened. Those vacancies are a challenge, but it's smaller boxes, and we know who we're targeting, and I do have a firm belief in the team that we're going to push forward and reduce those vacancies by financial year end. Can we yes, quick. And just while I'm up here, I'll do the next part, which is the operational efficiencies, where we talk about those high expense ratios. Some of them are out of kilter because of what's happened. So Amsterdam has been mentioned, where we've had to spend an exorbitant amount of money to fix a sewage problem, but that stops this calendar year. We just need to have the pumps electrified, and we don't have to do any pumping, because there's been a lot of honeysucking that's been the major cost. And then also employing experts for reporting, the engineers, the sewage project, but that goes away after financial year 26. In general, to bring down some of these issues we've had with expense ratios, I would like to talk quickly as a pre-introduction to Kudu. Our partnership with Fungi and Bolide is also one of our major turning points, I think, for operational efficiency. So essentially Fungi is a third-party utility manager, and we're going to do that in partnership, but I won't steal Kudu's thunder, and I'll let him talk about it further. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks, Fasima. So it's active management. And I guess just to move on, is just a few risk matrix. So the next slide, I guess only points noting is that there's 3 provinces that really matter: the Western Cape, the Northwest, and in Mpumalanga that account for around about 68% of our GLA by province. And even if you look at market value by province, it increases to 73%. Still Western Cape, Northwest, and Mpumalanga. In terms of being true to mandate of our exposure in terms of townships and rural, we're still predominantly 73% in townships and rural. So I'll say we are living the mandate then as we articulated. And also if you look at NOI by province, it's still pretty much Western Cape, Northwest, and Mpumalanga at 74%. If you go to the next slide, is a diversification issue. At year end, we were sitting at 6 out of 9 provinces in South Africa, which is quite good. We'll speak more about our activities that we've done subsequently a bit later. 2 slides down, Unati, is income producing assets. 2 more. Another one more. There we go. I think we've spoken to this. It was basically to just show the different matrix as it relates to the stable portfolio with more information of the average rentals per square meters that we get in from the respective properties, and average rental rate, expense ratios we've spoken about. If we go to the next slide, it's just different cuts and dices of our exposure. So because of those big properties, specifically Piet Retief and Rustenburg, so our portfolio as of March 2025 is predominantly food and apparel. And if you break it down by tenant group, yeah, the big ones is retailability, which talks to Edgar's Rustenburg, and the Spa Group are the top two. And by tenant brand, yeah, portfolio is Spa, it's Edgar's, it's ShopRite, and Boxer in terms of the exposure. Next slide, by merchandise, you're talking unisex wear, as well as grocer, which you would expect, as well as liquor. It's still amazing how liquor in these markets is still a big trader. And if you look at it, range by merchandise subcategory, there's also a similar picture in terms of grocer, unisex, and liquor that contributes majority of it. On the next slide is just an account of upcoming leases for the first 6 months of post financial year. So point is, we clearly are moving to proactively managing that hopefully sooner than 6 months. But it's part and parcel of what we monitor. And I think when the asset management team comes through later, they'll show you more data and dashboards that we are utilizing to do that. And then briefly to conclude, is just to give you a flavor of our properties, since you're only seeing Ekurhuleni yesterday. So starting with Amsterdam, Onati on the next one. It's one of our smaller properties. We spoke about it just now, 2.4 thousand square meters, anchored by ShopRite, Ackermans and KFC. Amsterdam is in South Africa, is just about 20 Ks, 60 Ks, 40 from the border of Swaziland, and the two properties in terms of Amsterdam and Piet Retief are very close from a management perspective. Ekurhuleni, I'll skip. We went through that yesterday. Two Cape Town assets being Erica. You're also seeing a trend that the properties that we've been buying, I'll say, since the last half until what we'll disclose in terms of what we've done to date, are definitely bigger properties. So Erica is 5,800, anchored by Spa, Crazy as well, Crazy Store, as well as Pharma in terms of clicks. Lesedi is, as I said, our inaugural development, 7,100 square meters, anchored by Boxer, Roots, as well as Pep. Matateni is in Newcastle, 3,400, Boxer, Debonair, and Pep. Piet Retief from Kondo is in Mpumalanga, one of our bigger properties, 7,500 square meters. We are in the process of swapping Spa with ShopRite. We're just in the middle of those negotiations. Jet and Clicks is a major. Edgar's Rustenburg is on the main CBD in Rustenburg. It's actually our biggest property by GLA, 9,800 odds. As I said, Jet, Edgar's RFO. So that one is going through a complete redevelopment, and maybe Kulu can touch on it later today in terms of what we're doing. But yeah, it's quite exciting work that we're doing there. Tembo, Wasima touched on 6,500 square meters. ShopRite is our only property that's double anchored from a drive-through perspective. And I came to learn, because I was just reading some odd stuff, to say Khayelitsha is the third largest township in South Africa after Soweto and Umlazi. So no wonder when people are taking the DA on, always focus on what are they doing for Khayelitsha. So I think it's going to be one of those things until something actually changes. But for us, it's quite a nice exposure to have in the portfolio. I think I won't say much around chapter 10, which is a retail catchment analysis. The only point I guess that I want to make is as we evolve, I guess, in terms of how we do the analytics of our catchment, so clearly we're moving away from pure sensors or demographics as is done similar to Stats SA. We're utilizing a lot of technology, being mobility data. We're integrating that with traffic studies. So traffic is also looking at how taxi or how people move. And then at Sapoa, when I was on the panel, I picked on Itumeleng, so I'll pick on him again to say, when we say it's important to be local, right? So you might do a catchment analysis that will give you stats to define the potential of the market. But as an example, so the example that I use, I just picked on the president of support to say he's clearly emerged, and clearly he lives in the burbs. But in the burbs, they've got very high walls, and when he goes to church on Sundays, he doesn't feel the spirit. And because he's left his friends so far behind, and his parents are still in the townships or in the rural. So most of the time is that on weekends, he'll go to the townships to hang out with his mates, and when he's hanging out with his mates, there'll be clearly drinks involved, and while he's there, he gets the car washed. That's why the car wash business has boomed. And he comes back on Sunday to go to church, and after church he goes to his parents to hang for the afternoon, and while he's there he gives the parents money to buy groceries. So how do you capture that money, which is a significant play, right, in terms of catchment area analysis? Similar to Ekurhuleni, is that if you only look at the township side and the Lani side, and you ignore the fact that you are on a major highway called the N7, and the number of people that travel between P and East London that actually shop and utilize the convenience is actually quite huge. But anyway, we'll talk more about that later. But what we're doing is, I suppose, sophisticating our catchment area, incorporating it in our asset management model, and actually if we just move on to the dashboards, to effectively give us this live data that helps us quantify what we call true potential of the products that we're creating, and understanding better the patterns of our shoppers. And during the year, I guess, briefly, we had started on Khanyesa. Khanyesa is a fancy slide that Belinda used to, I suppose, talk about our signature. We spoke about our signature, and I realized it's becoming our signature now, is that I also love art. And Kulu loves art. And we do believe that part of creating normality is also to give access to that makes us whole through culture. So as Belinda said in the presentation, that by utilizing local artists to personalize a space, not only does it make it beautiful, like Ekurhuleni mural is very different to the Sedi, which is very different to Khanyesa. So Khanyesa, we did open on the 26th of June 2025. It's in the northwest. It's about 4,500 squares. Kulu can maybe touch on it a little bit more later. Namakwe, which is the next slide, you're visiting that tomorrow, so I won't spend time on that. And maybe to conclude, because the chairman and I had fancy words, I have to leave you with some inspiration, because, as I said, it started with my previous speakers using big words like dreamers, believing, your story, on your story, etc. And the only thing I want to leave you with is that working with smart people is great, but working with kind and humble people is just next level amazing. Thank you. Let's say I've got Q&A, so let's go. Any guys, Adam? Yeah.
Some of the value you have to give away in terms of taxi associations or communities and that. Because, ultimately, if you don't have a fair return, you'll be out of runway soon, right? So, not a good way to start, but unfortunately, we all got to ask these questions.
No, it's a good question, very good question. So the way that we, I suppose, think about our investments, we think long term, So we've got a fund model that helps guide us how to acquire and how to manage the performance of our portfolio. So we're clearly mindful that we've got a hurdle rate. So in our fund models, and I think we'll demonstrate it earlier, it gives us a forward view. So yeah, so we can see the running rate on IRR on a forward basis. So which is what we use in IC to do the trade-offs in terms of what we acquire. And that is further augmented by, I guess, the models that we use when we acquire properties, which again will make assumptions of escalations and. But anyway, to cut a long story short, JCAV unfortunately is just a phenomena of private equity. Is that you get capital, and we've got fund expenses, and they're quite a lot, and the alpha from the performance, I guess, takes time before it catches up. But yeah, I'm pretty confident. I think our run rate at the moment is about 15.5. I'll say, all else considered, on a forward-looking RR basis, which is more than CPI plus 6, which is around about 9%, which is our hurdle rate. So we're looking good. So you'll start seeing it prospectively. Yeah, we were having this conversation last night. Now, property is actually a very easy asset class. When I say it's easy, is when you buy a property, you can see the building. You just do your DD to verify the condition end-to-end. You're buying cash flow. Cash flow is informed by leases that are contractual, and you know the duration of those leases. Your only assumption is, where are you in a cycle? Are you over-rented, where reversions are likely to be negative or positive? But it is very predictable, to be honest, in many respects. And then your value add is in terms of how efficient you manage your properties. Because it's a living organism. Yeah, I slept alone last night. Okay. It's like, sorry. Yeah, how you market to drive revenue and how you optimize your expense ratio. All those variables just adds to the bottom line, but it generates a lot of cash. So it's clearly collecting the rent, managing your arrears, and doing those basics right. I'll say it carries far less risk than, I guess, other investment types. But
Next question. Do you have a target for growing your portfolio? And if so, in which regions do you intend expanding and why?
yeah, so if you look at our capital structure of, I suppose, 1.3 billion of equity, our mandate allows us 60% LTV. So far, we've been utilizing 50%. So all else being the same, we've got, a 2.9 billion portfolio doing nothing. When I say doing nothing, as in just taking the leverage effects without taking the income growth as well as the capital growth. So I'll say, yeah, conservatively, yeah, it's going to be more than 2.9 billion portfolio in the next, by the time we get to commitment period. In terms of geography, yeah, I mean, as I said, I'll speak more about what's happened since year end. But this year for us is our biggest deployment year, better than what I've just reported on. So we are growing into another province. So as we sit, we are 7 out of 9 provinces, and what sits in the pipeline will be 8 out of 9. So I think our performance objectives, if we are not 5 billion by the time we exit, then we're not doing our jobs well. We'd like to think we're building a 5 billion enterprise with REimagine.
Okay, the next question from. Sorry, I have not asked people to say who their names are. But, we'll keep it at that.
Thanks, Noz. Thanks, Ben. My question is, my name is Sivua. My question is largely around tenancy exposure, strategy, risk profiling. Elwell North. We've got SPAR there. I think our liking is more around a mix between SPA, which is a bit versatile insofar as LSMs are related, and then you've got your USAVE that are speaking to the lower LSM and Boxer. Now, we've got Alwa North, which I believe is, I'd say, proportionately vastly demographic. We're swapping what you have as SPA for a Boxer, which is, I think, when you look at the product offering and the extent of, I think, upscaling the brand, you have limitations insofar as a Boxer is concerned. It should probably be playing around the rhinos, the OBC level, but then you then change from SPA. Why? What are you trying to do there? And then also, if we look at the property with Edgar's, how are we looking at that? And I'm just pairing that with what transpired with the Pick and Pay unbundling / Boxer and the great level of growth that we expected to see, the historics around Edgar's Edcon now sitting with retailability. Do we have a solid plan insofar as Edgar's is concerned in our Rustenburg store? Thanks.
All right, Development Director, do you want to hit those hard questions? I'll just start maybe with the macros to say, yeah, every cycle there's accidents that happen with retailers. So Edgar's was a known accident. Unfortunately, Edgar's Rustenburg was just caught with 6,000 of retail space in Rustenburg and Edgar's. So we knew that we needed to repurpose it in terms of creating more diversity of tenant mix, smaller boxes to take away the risk, right? And secondly, I'll say if you look at SPA and Boxer, what I see reported in the press in terms of SPA is that you could say that is probably uninspired in terms of growth. I just see corporate activity to close down the offshore exposure, and locally they have been closing down space. And within the Pick and Pay group, it's been reported, clearly the Pick and Pay supermarkets or the main brand has been under pressure. So clearly within the industry, we've seen, similar to Edgar's, where Pick and Pay has been working with the owners to create smaller boxes or close down stores. But within the group, Boxer has actually been outperforming. So I think Boxer reported their 1,000 store just the other day. So it's been incredible growth. But Kulu, if you can just touch on the thinking on Rustenburg and Aliwal North.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for the question. I think on Aliwal North, I think it's very clear for us, and context is very key. So what has happened there, if you know how the SPA group operates, it's mainly franchisee, and that was a franchisee store. There we're getting a corporate store. That's the first starter. The second starter is that we know what's happening in the town. SPA in that particular town wasn't doing particularly great. In actual fact, when you speak to the people on the ground, which are close to the township, they'll tell you that the SPA is quite expensive. Whether now it becomes about pricing and all of that, Boxer is much more competitive for that market. The SPA lease was coming to an end, I think, sometime next year. They had about a year to go, and they were struggling. In actual fact, I think a year ago, spent a lot of time with the SPA franchisees and the SPA group, and it was very clear that places like Aliwal North are not necessarily their traditional areas. Where they actually do very well in the Eastern Cape is around the Transkei. I think that details that, and maybe in terms of tenant mix of what we're bringing there, we're trying to bring a little bit of fashion, and we are also looking at a bank just to densify that area. We're only adding about 2,000, I think it's about 1,500 squares that we're adding there, and we already have, close to 90% of that space taken, including a restaurant. There is already a butchery that's there, and if it's a no-name butchery, just to give you an idea in terms of the numbers that they're doing in terms of turnover, they're doing about 4 by a month. I think that answers the Aliwal North question, and you'll let me know if it hasn't answered. And around Rustenburg, I mean, Rustenburg was always very risky for us from day one. You do laughs. So I think we entered a marriage where, yeah, we were forced into that corner of Rustenburg, but we had a thinking around it, and effectively what we've done is we've turned it around, according to us. Some people might say it slightly differently. So what we've done is that we've repurposed the space. So as you'll know, bulk of it was Edgar's and TFG Group. So Edgar's occupied about 6,000 and TFG occupied another 4,000 of the space. So what we've done is effectively reduced the space of Edgar's to about 1,500 from that 6,000. So we rationalized it and we brought in additional retailability brands in the form of, I think, Swagger, Legit, Beaver Canoe, if I'm not mistaken, including Eclipse. And also restaurants that will be trading out in that Fatima Bayat thoroughfare. We've created a mall effect. And that for that particular reason, so that you can have people circulating through that area. It is one of the first rejuvenation projects that are happening in Rustenburg in the longest time, besides the new centers that have happened just outside town. So in town, it's probably one of the first projects that have happened, according to the municipality at least. So what we've also done, I mean, if you look at the bottom floor, ground floor, it's currently fully let. So what we're looking currently is actually just adding more tenants upstairs. And unfortunately, as you know, in retail, the top floors are always a struggle. We are talking to the likes of colleges and the likes to occupy up the first floor. We're already in discussion with the college to take up some square meterage in the top floor. But guaranteed, the bottom floor is fully let. Unfortunately, it's a building that we inherited, and we've done the best we can with it, and it's due to open in March, 26th of March next year, and you will be invited. Hopefully, the top floor will be full by then. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions before we end? Okay.
Can we, sorry, Program Director, just looking at time. Can we make it the last question?
Okay.
Because we've got a development segment and we've got part two, so we can carry over the next round. Of
Okay.
questions. I'll give you two a chance. You're not allowed to defend Rustenburg, but
Yeah, no, I'm not going to defend that. Kulu's doing a great job there. Ben, I mean, I think I just wanted to just say congratulations to the team. I think you guys are doing a great job. You know, not wearing a Vukile hat, not wearing a Sapoa hat, just purely wearing a South African hat. I think what you guys have done is incredible. So the question that I wanted to pose to you as Commander-in-Chief is, what keeps you up at night?
Gee, I wasn't prepared for such deep philosophical questions, because Tumi will know that if I'm traveling a lot, I don't sleep very well. So no, on a serious note, from a capital formation basis, I fundamentally do believe that, seriously, Regulation 28 is intended to achieve a good cause by recycling pension money into the economy. So I guess I worry about a lack of adoption in that process at the first instance. And at the second instance, it's tough. I was having conversation with another one of our competitors to say, out of the participants in Melani's Fund Manager Development Program in 2019, which was focused on emerging managers, you can literally count in less than one finger the people that have made it to the other side. So it is very, very, very tough to raise capital as an emerging manager, just given where we are. So I do worry about it. So I think we got lucky to at least have closed the other side of $1 billion, but it is very, very tough for people south of $1 billion. I worry about whether the team, I guess, will stray stay true to form. And what I mean by that is the amount of work that we do as a team to just manage dynamics, because we are a small team. There's only 6 of us. And with 6 people of specialists in the areas, it means that whatever dynamic is going on, you can't ignore it. So I worry about, I suppose, our ability to still stay together, irrespective of dealing with the challenges, right? And maybe the 4th thing, so I'll do 5 things. The 4th thing, I worry about that man in the corner, because our development director, because what we normally don't speak about is, or maybe you guys don't have a full appreciation of it, is how hard it is to develop assets in rural and township areas. So we read about the construction mafia, extortion, because I shared more or less a little bit about Lesedi, but what we encounter in the Eastern Cape, where poverty kind of like hits you right in the face. The things that we have to deal with, are quite huge. So from a well-being perspective, I do worry about his mental well-being and safety. So maybe let me stick with those 4. But very good question, thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much. Please, can we give our CEO another round of applause?